semi-final one of Melodifestivalen 2021 has taken place, and it may have been, pandemic ready with no audience, social distance, but this was still a show. We've got 7 acts, 2 acts going straight to the final, 2 others getting a second chance, and 3 who are going home. Shall we talk about it?
Let's do this.
You guys, let's kick it off with the direct to final acts. The first is Dani Saucedo with Dandi, Dansa. Robin in New Zealand, what do you think?
When I first heard this in the studio version, because I was able to hear the audio previews earlier in the week, I thought it wasn't quite, like I was expecting a really big kind of, like, I call it a Eurovision killer kind of song. And I didn't think this was it, but at the same time, I knew that there was probably going to be something really cool going on with the staging. And I think he delivered. I'm still not quite sure what was going on with the cardboard boxes. It felt like, was that meant to be painted? And then they just went, nah, we haven't got time. Let's just write table, window, and But yeah, the whole thing, it was pretty, the staging was cool. Like a lot of people said, it's like Jamiroquai's Virtual Insanity music video with the moving set, and you think, how does he do it? It was a little bit shaky, which reminded me of, there's like an earthquake house at the Museum of New Zealand. Just that kind of, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll work on it and get it looking a bit more stable. But yeah, a catchy song. It's a lot like, or a bit like Dance You Off or Justin Timberlake's Dance With Me. It's just that kind of disco, falsetto, he's a slick dude. Yeah, I think it could have been better, but it certainly wasn't bad, and not at all surprising for direct till finale.
Porrig in Ireland.
I think by the time we got to song 7 and saw Dani's performance, it was easily for me the strongest and slickest performance of the whole night. It was like, Dani is basically, he's the kind of pop star that he has such charisma that he could be reading out the phone book and he'd sell it to you and you'd be like, I gotta vote for that. So the song, while it mightn't be up there with his other Melfest classics, it still is a decent pop song. It's quite catchy and it has a lot going for it. And particularly in the way the running order was structured, it really favored this song because it gave it a big boost in energy. It came straight after Nathalie's song Fingerprints, which was a very slow, very low energy song. And this just, like, it was the perfect lead in for Dani because it was such a contrast. And it was a good show closer, kind of saying to the people of Sweden, Melfest is back. We might have the pandemic, but we're going to have our own party here at home. And Dani came and he delivered, and he probably brought with him a little bit of nostalgia, because while he seems like kind of a young artist to us, it's like nearly 10 years since the first time. It is 10 years since the first time he was at Melfest as a solo artist. So, yeah, not surprised at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the word performance. This isn't a song contest, really. It's a performance contest. Melodifestivalen is putting the song in a setting, in a stage. And I think this, a room full of cardboard boxes, pandemic, Amazon orders, it's very now. We're all living in cardboard boxes. My cat's loving it. And there's one about to jump on my lap. Want to come here? Want to come here? So it had that very now feeling. The lyrics I read on Wiwibloggs.com are all about, it's been an awful year, but you know what? I'm still going to dance. I'm still going to, celebrate. And he's celebrating in isolation in a cardboard room. So, it kind of fits with the times. This is my least favorite of all of his Melodifestivalen songs, but it was the slickest one tonight, and that's all he needed. I think reputation matters a lot in Melodifestivalen. We see this all the time. It's hard for new acts to get a leg up, and it's a bit easier for established acts to kind of get a leg down. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. In any case, no surprise here. We move on to the other direct qualifier, which I'm really actually totally thrilled about, because we talked about this in our last video, Porg. It's Arvingarna, which Robin can say better than me. This old school boy band still slaying strong.
Yeah, so Arvingarna, it's a decent pronunciation. The song is Tänker, inte, which means I think we'll go home. And it's sort of a really incredibly high energy, upbeat song. It's really just about we want to go out and have a good time. And it's sort of a little bit of a reaction to the pandemic. Like everyone has to stay inside. But, you know, wouldn't it be just awesome to just go out and just stay out all night and have a really amazing time with your friends? The staging, people have said it's reminiscent of Guy Sebastian's staging with Tonight Alone. In their case, it does directly relate because the song is about being out on the street. So, you know, when all the nightclubs are closed, what are you going to do? You're just going to go and hang out by the side of the road with your dad friends. I don't know. Yeah, really fun song. The first time I heard it, I thought this is going to qualify one way or another. I wasn't sure if it was going to be direct till finale, but it was just such a good performance, really feel good, really high energy. And I can imagine, I think a lot of people will be watching Melodifestivalen who don't normally watch it because there's nothing else to do. So that song might appeal more. They might be going, you know what, this is good. This feels good. It's the right kind of vibe for this time. So, yeah, I'm really happy they got through, and they'll really bring, you know, it's a Swedish. In fact, the two direct qualifiers were both Swedish language songs, which is good. We don't normally see that. Yeah, I'm happy with both those two direct qualifiers.
This is one of those songs that it's basically a contest song. When you listen to it on the Thursday when the rehearsals first come out, and we kind of listen in isolation because they're drip fed throughout the afternoon. So it could be half an hour since we've heard the last song and we hear this song and it's like, okay, that's fine. And it's harder to compare and contrast. Whereas when you watch the show, it's bam, 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 bam. And then you're really able to compare the songs. And Arvingarna did stand out when compared to Jessica Andersson and Paul Ray and all the other kind of lower tempo songs. And they brought the energy, they brought the fun. They brought the bit of showbiz pizzazz that had been missing until that point in the show. And I think, I guess for Swedes, it's kind of a bit of nostalgia and when times were better, that when Arvingarna were top of the charts and there was no pandemic and they could all have a good time. And it's a nice kind of song that's nice to have in the final, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the song that will close out Melodifestivalen. It kind of screams that the home crowd pleaser that they use to have the last song in the final and leave everybody with a smile on their face.
To me, it sounds like the music to a raisin commercial. Like you could sell sultanas to this. It's like, come on, everybody, get some dried grapes. You know, it's just very uplifting and happy and sweet. And they look good. I'm sorry, Mr. Tuxedo Man, pure pizzazz, show business. They're like seasoned performers, and so like they were in their element. And also the language point, it must be quite comforting. Like obviously we live in English-speaking countries, but it must be quite comforting to kind of hear music in your own language at a time we're bombarded with Netflix, everything's in English. You know, all these shows coming at you. Like maybe the pandemic has made people look inward in a way. I don't know, probably not. I just know that this was so catchy. It's the hook I remember of all the songs. I'm not saying it was the strongest overall, but it's the one that kind of I could see on a cruise ship right now. It's like that kind of music that loops. In any case, we move on to Andra Chansen. They Will Live to Sing Another Day. The first act through was Paul Ray, The Missing Piece. Robin.
So, Paul Ray's song, The Missing Piece, to me it seems like a perfect song for Andra Chansen. Like, it's not the kind of song where you go, that's definitely going to go through to the final, but it's still good enough to get a second chance. The staging was really good. It had, like I think you said in the earlier reaction video, that sort of Felix Sandman every single day, like live performance kind of feeling with the microphone, and he had all the platforms. So it's sort of like a live performance, but also a bit interesting. There's something going on with the movement. Yeah, just sort of like a nice Ed Sheeran kind of vibe. Perhaps not a Melfest winner, but definitely there's obviously enough appeal of, you know, people liked it enough to vote for it to get it through to Andra Chansen. So yeah, I think it stands a good chance of making it all the way to the grand final.
I think of the four qualifiers tonight, it's easily the most contemporary song, and it's the one that I can imagine hearing on the radio straight away. I can imagine like switching on the radio tomorrow and hearing that come out, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And I think Paul has come on a bit since last year too. He had a bit more charisma and confidence, and his stage show was slicker. He looked more, I don't know, the boy next door. Last year he was kind of a bit sullen, whereas this year it looked more voter friendly. And it's nice to see someone progressing. I'm nearly disappointed that he didn't get direct to the final, but I can see why the other acts did go through. But yeah, he's definitely a deserving Andra Chansen. And yeah, there's nothing much else to say. That he got there with a song with Talking in My Sleep last year, and this is kind of from the same playbook. And if people like that, they like this, and I imagine they'll vote for it again.
I almost feel like the rehearsal clips we saw earlier in the week in the press site make things look cheaper than they are. Because tonight it looked so much better, and it was the same performance. And so I'm going to be wary next week watching the rehearsal clips, because this looked great. I said it looked cheap pefore, but no, it didn't look cheap. The orange plinths looked less papier-mâché now. They looked like orange plinths as opposed to DIY plinths. But I loved how you were basically in darkness, it's black, and then you have orange plinths, and you have some golden light, and you have him in beige. It was very simple block coloring, very effective, and his face, he was serving it. He is so confident this year. He's giving us all of that emotion. I didn't like the little muscle motion at the beginning when he's like, I'm strong. Like, ew, that's cringe. But beyond that, this was heartfelt and amazing. The other Andra Chansen qualifier is Lillasyster with Pretender, Rock on Robin.
This is, like, for me, there's a moment in the song when they go, in your mouth! And it's this big rock moment, and that's where I wake up. And I think that's one of the best things about the song, is they brought this really cool rock energy to it. And I think, yeah, like, it is always good when Melfest has a rock song, like a good rock song, because Swedish has a lot of good rock bands. And I think Lillasyster just delivered that this year, and they have really earned their place in Andra Chansen. They looked a bit surprised when they got through, so they weren't taking it for granted, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's just, I enjoyed it. It was just a really well executed performance. It reminded me a little bit just the staging of Outrigger from 2015 maybe. Just how they had those, I don't know, just the visual effects in the screen. Yeah, it was just really well done, and a decent rock act.
I think this is a perfect example of what Robin alluded to earlier about more people watching the contest this year who wouldn't normally watch it. Because if you were to look on paper and see Jessica Andersson, a woman with a nice pretty ballad, and another woman with a contemporary pop song, and then 4 aging rockers with a bit of screaming in the middle of it, you would write out the rockers first, and you would say that one of the women would get through. But no, the rockers have gotten through to Andra Chansen. They're not my cup of tea personally. I thought they had a nice stage show. It was engaging, but the song doesn't work for me. I don't like the disparity between the start, where it's like a slow country song, and then it breaks into this heavy rock. It's just too much for me. And it doesn't really have the memorability factor for me. I think that this is a song that will go to Andra Chansen, and it's nice that it gets a second day out, but I think it will stay in Andra Chansen.
To me, this is the one that most felt like a live performance, like you're at a concert in a rock stadium or something, and then, but for a split second I was like, oh, but where are the people? And then they had people on TVs. It was really cleverly constructed. I don't like the lyric, you bleed me out or I bleed out. It was very The Killing, it was uncomfortable. But this was actually visually, I think, maybe my favorite it was so eye-catching and busy. There were more strobe lights, than people in Stockholm. It was just so full on. Well done. Rockheads forever, y'all. That was good. All right, we move on now to the eliminated acts who will not be performing again. First up is Jessica Andersson with Horizon Robin.
Halfway through this, I thought this sounds like a Mariette song, the sort of song that she'd be singing, just like a pleasant kind of upbeat ballad, but with the big Jessica Anderson notes and the big Jessica Anderson dress. For me, I didn't really connect with it super well, but I think she gave a really good performance. Like, it's as good as she's ever given. I sort of think if you really wanted to give a Jessica Anderson song that really worked, it would be something like Party Voice. But she seemed comfortable with it. It was a good performance. Not surprising that it just missed out. She's obviously got like a solid fan base, and it was a good song. So not surprised that she didn't quite get it all the way.
I think Horizon, ironically, it's probably the kind of song that suits Jessica Anderson better, that her voice sounded lovely on the song. Whereas when you think back to Party Voice, while that was like a really good party floor filler kind of song, she relied very heavily on backing vocals back then. So in that sense, this was a better song for Jessica, but it's not a good song for me. I was unmoved by it, that she's singing all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like, remember when Instagram was first popular, that people would put these inspirational quotes on their grids saying, there's better days ahead if you look on the horizon. She was basically kind of singing those kind of things. And then the whole thing with the ribbons and the green dress, and a green dress is always hard to pull off. And the contemporary dancers, and it was kind of like a bit like Serta Berner, which is kind of a funny nod because Jessica was at Eurovision the year Sertab won, but she didn't do it. It didn't suit that kind of song. Like with Sertab's, it was fierce, look at me with the ribbons and I'm going to do this. And it was just kind of like Jessica was just getting tied up in knots, and it didn't really match with the symbolism of the song, because she was supposed to be going ahead to the horizon and getting free. Instead, she was being tied up. And the song itself, I thought, was a dated ballad, and it's not like, we've had kind of power ballads from Schlager divas before, but they have a certain level of modernity about them. I'm thinking at the top of my head, Molly Hammer had one back a couple of years ago, the year after she lost out to Jessica Anderson, and there's a few others like that, but this just was very like early 2000s kind of Melfest back in the doldrums, and I think she was relying on her fan support. So I'm not surprised. I thought it would come fifth, and that's where it came.
I think this improved significantly from the rehearsal clip we saw. I think the lighting was just on point. I loved the digital horizon in the background. It kind of created a sense of depth. It gave your eye a place to focus when you looked at the back, but then on the floor it was also illuminated. That was really classy. The song was classy. The dress, honestly, I don't want to harp on it because I don't usually think dresses are make or break, but this is like showing up at your wedding wearing seaweed. You know what I mean? It was like, it really killed the mood because everything else was there. But the dress, the tugging, it was like tug of war. I'm just glad the girl didn't rip because she is a treasure. And as you know, she is watching over me right now on this wall. Wait, where is she? Hey, Jessica. Wait, I'm bad. Wait, there she go. Go for gold, but not this year. All right, we move on. 6th place, Kadiatou with One Touch. Porg and I were, we were talking good stuff about Miss Kadiatou based on the rehearsals, but Sweden has turned their back on her. Robin.
I thought she didn't quite sound as good as she did in the studio version, and that isn't really necessarily a bad thing because most people watching Melfest won't have heard the studio version. They will only be hearing her live, and the vocal is fine. I don't know, maybe it's just that she was on first and people had sort of forgotten about her. I also think it was a really strong semi-final, so there was no sort of disposable act. Everyone was actually really good to some extent. So, yeah. And also she's not as well known perhaps as like Dandi and Arvingarna. So, yeah, I mean, I think she did a good performance. I hope she'll be back in the future, but it just wasn't going to be... Oh, the pop drop as well. that's another thing. Pop shops don't always work well at Eurovision or Melfest because you've got this big performance where there's no singing, just dancing, and I think that can sort of disconnect viewers. But yeah, I hope she'll be back in the future.
When we did the rehearsal video, I said that it seemed like she was holding back and she wasn't giving it her all, but it seemed like she was, and that was her all, because it was the exact same performance nearly as we saw in the rehearsals. And it was like that she had batteries and that they were running low and that she needed a bit more energy and a bit more oomph, that she wasn't able to quite sell the song. It didn't feel authentic, and it didn't feel like she was committed to this style of music. I'm not familiar with her previous work and whether she typically sings this kind of stuff, but this song didn't suit her at all, and it is a pity, because I think if it was with another performer, maybe like Hannah Firm or even Clara Hamstrom, who's going to be on later on in the season, that they would have been able to do much more with this and deliver it more, because there's a thing between Dua Lipa has it where she can seem kind of that she doesn't care much, she's a bit nonchalant, but she's cool. Whereas I think maybe Kadiatou was trying to go for that, but she just didn't seem like she was involved in it at all, that she was beyond nonchalant, that she was kind of over it. And whether that was nerves or that she wasn't comfortable with the song or whatever, I don't know. If you had said to me 2 hours ago before the show started, would she be the one that was coming sixth, I would have said no. But once the performance was over, I was kind of like writing her off in my head, and that it was on paper a very good show opener, but in the way the show progressed, it kind of was a bit of a damp squib to the launch of Melfest to 2021.
Kadia who? Kadia 2? No, Kadia 6. Sixth place, next to last. In retrospect, this is about showing off the stage, I think. It opened the show and said, look at the cool lighting effects we can do. It looked like one of those 80s arcade games, all the lights across the screen. I really liked that. But when you try to give shades of Dua Lipa, you can end up in the shadows. And I think that's what happened, because we've heard this song done better by others, which is a shame. But I hope she comes back with a song that suits her. Yes, you are a bright light, Kadia 2. All right, we move on. Last place, Fingerprints from Nathalie Brydolf. This was a fan favorite going into this, in terms, at least foreign fans, looking at comment sections on Instagram and our own poll. It didn't connect with me and Porg in rehearsals. Robin, did it connect with you tonight?
This was my favorite when I heard the audio. But at the same time, I could sort of tell that it wasn't a big song. It wasn't sort of like a big entertainment moment. And I thought she would have to do something really special for that to work well. And I think we've seen songs like this at Eurovision that haven't done well, like Blackbird, I think, had the same kind of energy. It's a nice song, but if you're not sort of actively watching, it can be very easy to be distracted by the bowl of chips on the table in front of you, or the cat, or just something else that's going on around you. Whereas a group like Arvingarna or a Dandi is going to be like grabbing your attention. So I can see this. It was a really nice song, but not surprising that it didn't work at Melfest. I think this, I kind of think this isn't the end of the road for her, and I hope, like I said with Kadiatou, I hope she'll be back in the future.
My comments from the rehearsal video still stand, that she has a wonderful voice, but the song itself goes nowhere, and it's just a flat line. It's like a flat line, and it doesn't even have the beep at the end when the flat line ends. It's just over. And it kind of gives me a new appreciation for the likes of Barbara Pravi, who can have kind of a low-key song and keep you engaged throughout, and every single note you're kind of watching what's happening. Whereas this, you're kind of at the very start, you're like, oh, this is nice, and then by the end of it, you kind of like, your mind just starts to wander. Oh, Danny Saucedo is up next, I wonder what he's going to bring. And I think that's probably what happened with Nathalie, that people were more distracted by what was coming on next than the message and the feeling that was behind the song. And it clearly got overlooked. It came in last place. I'm not sure if it deserved last necessarily, but
what, did it deserve eighth? What are you saying?
But it might have deserved to be above the green dress with Jessica. But yeah, no, it was never gonna make it out of this semi, I don't think.
I just think Black expands. It was like you just got a sense of how big the stage was and how small she was relative to it, and the music didn't really fill the gap. Do you know what I mean? Like I just felt there was an emptiness. The lyrics are beautiful. Shout out to Laurel Barker who wrote the lyrics. The lyrics are lovely, but musically there's no climax. There's no. I didn't feel like I was working towards anything. I just felt like I was running around a track or on a treadmill, and you want that carrot. You want to grab that carrot and eat, and this. It was more like a soup with no salt, no pepper, no Tabasco or sriracha. You know what I'm saying? Give me a crouton or something. In any case, I think she will be back. As Robin said, she's stunning and she can sing. My God. Just get her a better song. In any case, final thoughts on this opening semi. I'll kick it off. I'm so happy Melfest is back. This stage is gorgeous. I think the fact that this is happening in a pandemic, they've done a brilliant job. Like in terms of enjoying the show, I didn't mind there was no audience. Like it didn't make a difference to me. I really, really enjoyed this visually, particularly. Some of the songs, it's a strong semi, but these songs are not to my taste. But I wouldn't say this is weak. Not to my taste. But I'm pleased with the results. Robin.
Yeah, they did a good job of creating the atmosphere that you get with an audience. Like when the hosts were on stage, there was just a sort of low noise of sort of audience murmur, sort of people just talking in the audience. So that gave the impression that they were performing to an audience, not just an empty hall. It was well done. I think a really good example of how to do a big music competition show with no audience. And I think the Dutch team will be paying attention to get ideas for Eurovision. It was a really tough semi. Like I think all 7 acts were really good in their own way. I think the qualifiers are all good. It's going to be a tough Andra Chansen, and the grand final is going to be really good as well. So, yay Sweden! Yay!
I think, I'm not sure if many people watching are on Twitter, but there was a fair bit of drama just before the semi-final with the Swedish journalists were all kind of wetting themselves saying, oh, this is the best Melfest for years and years and years. Oh, we're so great. Well done, Sweden. And then the Eurovision fans heard the snippets and they were like, oh no, this is the weakest. Why are you calling this strongest? And then the journalists in Sweden retaliated saying, oh, well, look at you, the UK, you can't do proper national finals. And there was a tit for tat. I think the semi-final was somewhere in between the two extremes, that I wouldn't say that it was the strongest nor the weakest. I think it was tough in that all the songs were kind of on quite a level playing field. Like, while I've said harsh things about some of the non-qualifiers, if they had gotten through, I wouldn't have been disappointed that Dandi was out or that Arvingarna were out. I was perfectly happy for them to go, but I didn't have the emotional connection or bond to any of the songs that I wasn't. Usually when I'm watching it, I'm kind of biting my nails. I'm like, oh, please, Dollar, or please, Anna Bergendahl, or whoever, get through. Whereas tonight, I kind of went off and had dinner and came back and was like, oh, the results are over. So I hope that next week has kind of, at least for me, has a batch of songs that I can invest in and root for.
Yeah, maybe this is the best Melfest relative to the challenges producers have faced, and so it's skewing people. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it is a real challenge to put on a show right now, and they've done a brilliant job. And also the fact that 2 Swedish language songs won this, also, I don't know. Maybe there's some underlying factor we're not like identifying that's related to the pandemic. In any case, that's what we think. What do you think? Are you happy with the results of Melodifestivalen semi-final 1? Do you think the winner of Melfest is in this semi? Let us know here on Wiwibloggs.
And tell us what you think in the comments below.
And give us a like, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos.
And we will see you later. Bye.
Bye.